Before we begin with our special vigil for the night, I just want to acknowledge that we are standing on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. It is an honor and a privilege that we are able to gather here today on Parliament Hill with all of you exceptionally and wonderful people. We are here to honor our Canadian children, and we appreciate all of your help and all of you being here on this cold, chilly night. We are gathered here today on our nation's capital to advocate for our children who have been abducted to other countries. In 1959, the United Nations released the Declaration of Children's Rights. Principle 7 of the Declaration states that a child is entitled to receive education, which shall be free and compulsory, which will promote general education on a basis of equal opportunity. However, my children, as of today, have been deprived of a formal education. It has been almost 2 years now, and I have mentioned this to several organizations. Nothing has been done to enforce this United Nations principle. Instead, at the young ages of 10 and 11 years old, they have been working since they live in a country, Lebanon, where there has been financial and economic turmoil. Principle 10 of the United Nations Declaration states that the child shall be protected from practices which may foster racial, religious, and any other forms of discrimination. Yet my children attend a religious program which teachings do not always align with modern philosophies and progress. In 1973, the United Nations implemented a section declaring that the minimum age to work hazardous jobs should be 18 years old. As mentioned earlier, my two young boys, aged 11 and 12 years old, have been working in a butcher shop and sometimes made to do deliveries in busy and unsafe neighborhoods. When discussing children's rights, the first clause of the United Nations ensures that no one is allowed to kidnap you, a message to all children around the world. However, as it stands today, my children have lived more years apart from me than they have lived with me. But today is not about me. Today is about them, and the fact that Omar and Abdulghani have been deprived of my love and nurture and compassion. I am here today to honor the memory of my two boys and standing here in the hopes of getting them back. It has never been a question of if for me, but a question of when. Today, I stand before you with the reality that my two young and precious boys have now lived more years void of us than they have with us. But hope never dies. So for tonight, I just want to give a brief description about my two little boys. Omer will be 13 years old in just a few days. He is my strong tiger. His favorite color is red, and he likes to play soccer. His favorite movie is How to Train a Dragon. Abdulghani, also known as AG, is 11 and a half years old. He is my cuddly teddy bear. He likes to play games and eat and watch movies, and his favorite movie is Kung Fu Panda. My boys are both really sensitive, playful, brave, and so full of life. Even through a screen, their smiles have the ability to brighten anyone's worst day. Not one day goes by, not one moment goes by where my heart does not ache for them. The memories of living with these two little beloved and cherished young boys keep me strong and keeps me going on and living on. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Alec. I've traveled from British Columbia to be here with these brave people and all of you wonderful supporters to visit the embassies representing the countries that are harboring our children, to meet with Global Affairs Canada and ask them for help in securing better support from the Canadian government. Jolly spoke about the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. I'd like to pick that up and speak a little bit about what it means in Canada for legislation. This is going to start a little bit dry, but it's going to end a little wet, so bear with me. Canada ratified the Hague Convention on the civil aspects of international child abduction in 1983, almost 40 years ago. This is the predominant international legislation on IPCA. It is notably not ratified by harboring countries such as Lebanon, United Arab Emirates, Iraq, and many others. It is notably ratified, but often ignored by harboring countries such as Brazil, Paraguay, Japan, and many others. The Hague Convention has a guideline time to resolution of 6 weeks due to the urgency of protecting the child's experience. 6 weeks. Canada ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1991, more than 30 years ago. The Senate Human Rights Committee first reported about the UNCRC's implementation in Canada in 2001 in a report called Promises to Keep, Implementing Canada's Human Rights Obligations. That's a pretty dry report title. In 2004, 3 years later, they tabled another report called Who's in Charge Here? In this, they reported that after 13 years, the UNCRC's obligations had not been met in Canada. In 2007, 16 years after ratification, the committee confirmed this again. This third report is titled Children, the Silent Citizens. It states, in the end, our intensive study of children's rights and the Convention on the Rights of Children only confirmed our committee's earlier conclusions that Canada must begin to take its international human rights treaty obligations more seriously. When the Canadian government ratifies a treaty, it must keep its promises and work diligently towards effective implementation of that treaty at home. This is not happening now. It continues, the Convention has been effectively marginalized when it comes to its direct impact on children's lives. The committee is deeply concerned about this situation, and through this study, emphasizes the importance of living up to our obligations under international human rights treaties. Serious initiatives to implement the Convention by the federal government and by other levels of government across Canada could have a profound impact on real children's lives. In this report, the committee calls on all levels of government in Canada to comply with our legal obligations respecting children by improving institutions, public policy, and laws that affect them. It continues, no body is in charge of ensuring that the Convention is effectively implemented in Canada, and the political will is lacking. The federal government needs to take the lead with respect to implementation of the Convention. A reminder that this is written by the Canadian government about the Canadian government after interviewing hundreds of witnesses. The report quotes Collins, Pearson, and Delaney's rights-based approach in saying that the UNCRC places a moral and legal obligation on states to make sure that everyone's rights are being respected and to determine and remedy those cases where this is not happening. By ratifying human rights treaties, states accept the responsibility of implementing the rights enshrined therein. States become legally accountable. The UNCRC is a comprehensive document addressing poverty, health and welfare, Aboriginal rights, rights to identity, and family. These include, both generally and specifically, child abduction. For example, Article 9 sets out a child's right not to be separated from their parents against their will. A child whose parents reside in different states shall have the right to maintain, on a regular basis, save in exceptional circumstances, contact with both of their parents. Article 11 states, state parties shall take measures to combat the illicit transfer and non-return of children abroad. Continues, to this end, state parties shall promote the conclusion of bilateral or multilateral agreements or accession to existing agreements. In 2003, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child recommended in its report on Canada that maximum assistance should be provided through diplomatic and consular channels in order to resolve cases of illicit transfer and non-return in the best interest of the child. I'm sure that it hasn't passed your notice that I'm quoting dates that are long past. Ratifications in 1983 and 1991. Reports from 2001, 2004, and 2007. But these reports, which are clear about the government's failings to meet its obligations, could as well be published today. This failure becomes the experience for a parent of an abducted child. But this is something we learned for ourselves in those first horrific hours, days, and weeks when our worlds had been torn to shreds, when we were surrounded by the shoes and half-completed homework, while there's still a child's laundry to wash, and that child is 10,000 kilometers away. We are told to check. Is the country a Hague signatory? In my case, yes. Okay, then unless that country is unimaginably corrupt, she'll be back. It might not be 6 weeks, it might be a few months. To quote my otherwise wonderful lawyer, who I assure you will never use those words again. We are given false hope and it slows us down. We download the checklist. We contact the police, the local Hague office, Global Affairs Canada. We provide them with the documentation they need, and we trust that with their expertise, their access to government, and their commitment to protecting the rights of our children, that they'll work quickly. But nobody is in charge. We walk past the school and can't stop crying in public on a sunny day in spring. We find treasured seashells in our pockets. We regret washing their pillowcases. We would do anything to smell their hair. We try in vain to get back in touch, contacting family, reaching out to the abductor, scouring the internet and social media for any sign of what's happening. We're scared for them, taken away from everything they know, not having any way to understand what's happened, scared for how it's being explained to them, scared for the sudden end of their childhood. We know they've outgrown their shoes, their shirts. We have to decide what's to keep and what's healthy and what we have to give away. Their classmates move on and form new friendships. Our families absorb the shock. It breaks some of us. It breaks some of them. None of us will ever be the same. It took me 6 months to learn the basics I needed to have known in the first week. It was 2 months before I was able to speak with my daughter on the day after her 7th birthday. 4 minutes, ended abruptly. A month later, 9 minutes. She couldn't wait to come back to Canada. It's been 3 years. I'm still waiting for the courts in the harboring country to decide whether or not she should come home. But their inaction is as clear as any decision. Canada knows that they're offside of the law. I used to think that if I just explained the situation, they would understand. The problem isn't that Canada doesn't understand. Nobody's in charge. A year after my daughter was abducted, I had read everything I could find. All the news stories, all the legal documents, all the case history, in both Spanish and English. I had no answers. I was grieving for my daughter, attempting to continue working through trauma as the legal costs mounted. My worldview was badly shaken. This kind of thing doesn't happen in real life. Ask yourself, do you believe that a thing like this could happen to you? If it did, surely Canada's mechanisms for human rights would leap into action. This is a naive worldview, a very Canadian one. I'm very fortunate that it's never been challenged until this. It was unbelievably confusing, and it came at a moment of intense trauma. I started reaching out to the parents I'd found in news stories. Cesar, Jolly, Elena, Beto, Stephen, Oscar, Allison, Jamie, and more. I found a private WhatsApp group, and for the first time since the abduction, in that I found a group that understood what I was going through, and all of the complex emotions, desperation, confusion, loss and anger and hopelessness. Any of you who are parents know what parenthood does to your brain. It redefines your priorities around your child, what you care about, who you spend your time with, how you structure your day, and how you plan your future. Suddenly that space in the center of your universe is a black hole. Your house is empty, and your life is without purpose. Family doesn't always understand. Some friends do, but some don't. I've read many stories of traumatic loss, and they all feature the same patterns. People are afraid of saying the wrong thing, and so they say nothing at all. We are dying to hear our children's names in the mouths of others. So that we know that they aren't forgotten. Finding that group of peers, this group, was the first step for me in pulling myself out of a very deep depression. I worked through that depression to pay rent, to pay the electrical bills, to pay the legal bills. Incidentally, it's normal for these processes to cost well over $100,000. And if you don't pay that money, if you don't act fast, you miss opportunities you will never have again. And I worked through that depression to move on the many fronts a parent needs to pursue after an abduction. To maintain my relationship with my daughter in any way that I could. To work through the Canadian legal system and the legal system in the harboring country. to engage 2 or sometimes even 3 governments and international organizations as well. It's a crushing load, and one that's too much for any of us to bear, and yet we all bear it. In finding this community, I was immediately faced with the tremendous need for help. We all needed so much more that wasn't available to us. To keep us strong is a basic requirement, because without that there is nothing else. That means peer support, it means professional counseling, it means financial support to keep us healthy and even housed in some cases. With that baseline, each of us needed more help that we were not receiving in the urgent pursuit of reestablishing contact with our children. And that's what brings us here to Ottawa today. We're going to hear from some of the many other parents in our community who couldn't be here today. But first I'm going to pass the microphone back to Jolly to talk a bit more about what we do as an organization. I want to thank every one of you for listening to us, for hosting us in your restaurant, in your cafe, for helping us with the beautiful candles and posters that we see now and we'll be seeing later, but also the community listening online and the folks who couldn't make it all the way to Ottawa. This really means the world to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec, for that wonderful, wonderful speech. All right. So yeah, I'm back again to tell you a little bit about our organization. We came together about a few years ago in an informal kind of setting, and we've developed ever since. We are a collective of left behind parents who have formed a bond through our heartaches, through our struggles, and through our grief. We found our little community in this vast nation, and we formed the organization Return Our Children Home Canada, and that is the brainchild of Shelley, Howla, Alec, and myself. The organization has since grown. We are the 4 board members, and we welcome Messi as a newest board member. Messi is in the crowd today. The organization was conceived about 4 years ago and has developed into what is now known today as Return Our Children Home Canada. We launched our website in February of 2021. We are a nonprofit organization, and our goals are advocacy, support, education, and networking. So I'm just going to explain every one of those components and values and what we do with them. The first one is advocacy. We are advocating for governmental change in laws and regulations involving IPCA, which is International Parental Child Abduction. We're advocating locally, nationally, and internationally. But our advocacy goes beyond governmental levels. Our advocacy extends to our children. After all, our children depend on us whether they are with us or not. They are the future generation. We advocate for their rights, their emotional and mental health, their development, and their overall well-being. The second component is education. We are committed to educating the public on IPCA and to bring about awareness on alienation, which unfortunately happens all too often, whether it's nationally, locally, or internationally. And it is devastating to the well-being of the children, which should always be our first priority in any case regarding family law, as well as international and human children rights issues. Our third notion is support. We are committed to supporting each other. We have learned a lot through our ordeals individually and together, and have continued to support each other through the years. So as we grow in numbers, which is an awful fact to perceive, we have pledged to maintain consistent and frequent welfare checks with members of our organization. And finally, the fourth component is networking. Part of our networking involves connecting with each other, with other left behind parents, and helping them along their journey. But in our progress as an entity, we have also met other organizations which uphold the same values as ours and pledge to bring back all abducted children. I Stand in the U.S. is one of them. Shine the Light for Abducted Children for Kids is another one. A representative from that organization is with us today, Randall, also based in the U.S. I Hope, which is a newfound organization based in Lebanon. We're working with them as well. Find My Parent, Bring Abducted Children Home, which is regarding kids abducted to Japan mostly, but also they are US based and also have worked with different organizations as well as with us. A project we have in the making is our calls for action. We are hoping that our Canadian government will listen to our ideas and find ways to implement them. And Alec will now explain the key points.
All right, it's not getting warmer. This is not as long as the last one, but it's important as well. Thank you for sticking with us and doing your best to stay warm out there. So Jolly introduced the different kinds of work that Return Our Children Home Canada does, and I want to describe one of the centerpieces of that work that speaks to the need for legislation. This is a set of calls to action. One of our first challenges was connecting meaningfully with the Canadian government. In pursuit of that engagement, we reached out to the Honourable Bob Ray, head of Canada's mission to the UN. He invited us to send our policy recommendations to Kathy Bunka, who was at the time head of policy within Global Affairs Canada. We worked through the rest of 2021 to take this opportunity. In December of 2021, we submitted what we're calling the Canadian Abducted Children Calls to Action. We were inspired in this idea by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as we believe that we have a similar need for a comprehensive response by the government that addresses several jurisdictions. Our challenge has been that every one of us has written to our MPs, to the Prime Minister, to several Ministers of Foreign Affairs, and many other representatives of the government. When we do receive a response, what we receive is a redirection to Global Affairs Canada. When we contact Global Affairs Canada, we're directed down the chain to consular case management. Many of us have struggled in our relationships with consular case management. We've often felt underserved, uninformed, disappointed, and angry. But, and I'm speaking both personally and for the direction I believe that we need to steer as an organization, I don't think consular case management bears much responsibility for our cases being stalled. I believe that we need consular case management's help in bringing our cases and our needs back up to the right level of government, to let them know that it's too big for consular case management. That if they believe, that is the government, that consular case management is currently empowered to do what really needs to be done, they're wrong. These calls to action are published on our website, returnourchildrenhome.ca, and I encourage you to read them. They address prevention, education, support in the case of abduction, diplomatic engagement with harboring countries, and more. In particular, we drew inspiration from two other documents. The first is the Goldman Act in the United States. This was brought into power in the US in 2015 in response to David Goldman's difficulties in bringing his son home from Brazil. In this case, the abducting mother passed away after the abduction in childbirth, leaving David's son Sean in the care of his maternal grandparents. Even so, with only one surviving parent, it took David years and good luck and diplomatic support at the highest levels to bring his son home. The Goldman Act aims to remedy situations in which a country, in this case Brazil, fails to meet its obligations under the Hague Convention. However, these tools can be applied beyond Hague cases and include a series of escalating tools that can be used to bring pressure on a country once a very reasonable deadline is passed. The second source of inspiration is a 1998 Canadian government report, a report to the Canadian government by the Federal Committee of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. This committee was given a mandate to study the issue of international parental abductions and came up with a set of recommendations, again comprehensive. These covered transparency in reporting, co-funding, legislative gaps, and much more. I'm very sorry to say that the failures identified in handling these cases in that federal committee in 1998 are the very same ones that we're facing now, almost 25 years later. I invite you to look at the posters around us, each with a date of abduction, and imagine how these families' stories would be different if the government had responded back in 1998 with something more than, "It's hard. It's not our job. We'll look into it." But here we are now. We submitted our calls to action in December last year, and while we hope to discuss them with Global Affairs Canada tomorrow, I will note that as of today, we've not received any substantive feedback or next steps. Save tomorrow's meeting. This is why we need to keep the pressure on. If you can, please read the calls to action on our website and contact your federal MP to make them aware of this work and the 1988 FAIT report that came before it. Next, I'll pass the microphone back to Jolly. We'll hear from Shine the Light and have opportunities from other parents to tell their stories, including written statements from parents who couldn't be here but are watching and listening online.
Okay, so our first guest speaker is Randall Murphy from Shine the Light from Pennsylvania, USA. He drove all the way here and surprised us, and we thank him for his support. Well, we had a feeling he was going to come, but then we saw him in the streets and we were surprised. So I recognize him from his yellow car. All right, Randall.
Randy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jolly, and thank you, Alec and Misa. Messi. I gotta get it right. And Zaina's here.
Best soccer player in the world, man.
You guys, thank you for being here for them and for these kids. And blessing this organization with how you all have already blessed. And it's a sight. And I hope, Jennifer, you're getting a shot of all of these signs. It's amazing. Amazing. Oh. First of all, I'm a dad to a daughter named Hannah, and a son named Ryan. They were kidnapped in 2012 to Port Coquitlam, BC, Canada. 10 years has gone by. They're now adults. I do not have a relationship with them. And I pray every day that they hear the call to come home. That they're loved beyond measure. And I've shared that over the years. They're loved beyond measure. And in that journey, I've been blessed to found Shine the Light for abducted children. And what we do, in just a brief comment, is we empower parents in respects to domestic and international child abduction. We are a safe, welcoming, collective community of leaders supporting parents who face prevention concerns, which is if we could prevent an abduction, as Alec just shared with 1998 policies that I need to look that up and look at that. I'm sure they haven't changed. They haven't changed in the US either. But if we could prevent, children's lives would be much better off. And but we also offer a caring love when children are abducted, and for a parent to know that somebody is there means all the world. And we're blessed as leaders. And those leaders unfortunately can't be here today, but they are seeing the news coming from Return Our Children Home Canada. They're seeing the news. They are thrilled with what is happening in this land. And Canada's stolen children must come home. Canada's stolen children must come home, and they're loved. God bless.
Thank you, Randy. Next, I would like to ask Zainab to come here. Zainab is a member of our organization. She flew out from Calgary. She is a mother of a young girl who has been taken to Iraq.
Hi everyone. My name is Zainab Mehdi. I am a mom for the daughter Zahra Al-Azawi. She's now 15 years old. I didn't see her since 2018, June 16, when she left under the name of summer holiday. I have sole custody, and I still have good heart to give him permission and consent paper to take my daughter and let her enjoy the summer holiday. I didn't know the bad intention that he hid in his heart against me and weaponized my daughter to revenge. 4 years I never seen my daughter. 4 years I can't hold her in my hand. 4 years I just live with her, left picture and school stuff and toys and fuzzy pants, haircut. Just I want to say something. No one has the right to deprive parents, one of the parents, such as mom or dad, from their kids. Because kids is so precious and they are the apple of eyes. No one has the right to make us grieving for our kids. And we are love all our kids. We love you all. I just wanted to tell all these pictures and every child that we love you all. We are not abandoning you, and we are here for you no matter what, and we are waiting for you. And one day, the dream will come true. It's just a matter of time. And if you allow me, I wanted to just send a message through this place. And I appreciate all of your support and empathy to stay in this cold weather, to feel our pain. This is really precious feeling. I appreciate everyone time, everyone support. So I wanted to just send a message to my daughter, which is get a lot and strong brainwashed against me. It's horrible. It's horrible. Child, a parent at alienation. It's horrible to make a child be against the mom or dad. It's very horrible things. And karma can work well. Karma can do their job very well. So this message I send it to my daughter, but unfortunately I get very bad response, which is I am so sure that's not my daughter. She's the one who wrote it for me. But I will read what I wrote for her, and I am forgiving her whatever she said because she's under control. I wonder what you are doing and how you are living life. What new thing did you learn today? And how did you sleep last night? Did you feel rainbows on your face or sunshine on your eye? Of all questions left unknown, the biggest one is why? Why can't we be together? Why can't I guide you through this world? Why can't I watch you grow? This, I just don't know, but I promise we will be together no matter how long it seems, and always in my dreams. This is the message I send it to my daughter, and also I want to read the last things that she always send it to me, because she's my only daughter from my marriage. She always send me this message to share her love with me or to express her love. She said, I never pay attention in math, but if I did, I still could not calculate how much I love you. I pay much attention in English, but still I can't describe in a word how much I love you. But I know I never want to lose you. I am not good in history because I only can think of our future. I never listen when I have geography because I don't need an atlas to know that you are my word. Love you. Thank you so much for all of you. And I appreciate support for Randall, and Julie and Alec and all the parents that left behind, and just wanted to tell, finger crossed, it's just a matter of time and dream will come true. Thank you. God bless. Thank you, Julie.
I just want to still thank everybody for sticking out this cold. What can I say? It's Ottawa. Last week it was warm. We were in t-shirts, and then today we woke up to snow. So I'm so sorry. I'm so grateful as well. Just bear with us. We're just going to read a few statements, and then we're going to have a candlelit vigil if you don't mind. So we have a few statements from some of the parents who couldn't be with us today. They just emailed it to us. I'm going to read one of them. This one is addressed to Global Affairs Canada. I am a Canadian citizen and a parent of 3 children who were internationally abducted from Canada in 2009. I can attest that when my children were abducted, the Canadian government provided extremely little assistance. In the subsequent 13 years, I have seen no improvement whatsoever in how the Canadian government assists parents whose children have been internationally abducted. There has been no process improvement. There has been no improvement in reports. There has been zero accountability. Parents continue to be essentially left alone to fight for their children while facing overwhelming adversity. Return Our Children Home Canada seeks to assist the government in how they can improve. And that is our goal for tomorrow, just FYI. Alec is gonna read a couple statements too.
Thank you. So our community is about 20 to 25 parents, and we did put out the call for them to send in statements when they weren't able to be here. My guideline was for them to be half a page, and as you can imagine, it was a struggle for folks to provide that. I don't feel like I have the right to abbreviate any of these, so I'm going to go through them. So yeah, please bear with us. They're powerful. It's worth the words. My children, Aziza and Kareem, were kidnapped by their father in July 1991. At that time, I'd never heard of parents kidnapping their own child. They were kidnapped under the pretense of a summer vacation to Kenya. It happened a couple of years after I divorced him. Why kidnap your own child? Since he did that unbelievable crime, there have been many more parental kidnappings. I've come to recognize that it's done to alienate the other parent and to obtain total control, hoping to destroy that other parent. This is betrayal, manipulation, and lies with that goal in mind. This act is not committed out of love for the child or in the child's best interests. They live in hiding and fear of getting caught. The children are not safe, often don't receive proper medical attention, kept out of school at times. While so many want to come to Canada, these criminals will take their children into war-torn areas just to keep them away from the other parent. I had no contact with my 2 children for 7 years, not even knowing where they were. I later found out they went from Kenya to Saudi, then after 4 years flew to Pakistan to obtain false passports, and then back to Saudi with fake identity. The father had a sister living in Saudi who helped him. The abductor always has family help. He was there only because it was impossible for me to go there, even if I knew where they were. They went to great lengths to put us off their trail. All that time, he made my children fear getting caught because he told them they would be thrown in jail. He would be thrown in jail, and I was the enemy. There were warrants out for his arrest for kidnapping ×2. My family and I went on writing campaigns to every MP, foreign affairs, and embassy workers. There was no internet back then. My telephone bill was in the hundreds of dollars every month. I was still a mother, even though my children were not with me. I constantly brainstormed and obsessed about how to find them and bring them home. I spent thousands on private investigators and presented a $10,000 reward for information. In many interviews, I looked directly into the camera and voiced, "I don't know why they won't help me," meaning the embassies and politicians. The Canadian Search Centre went to Kenya and got Interpol, lawyers, and detectives involved. They wanted to help. Interpol interrogated my family, the family my ex was staying with, and discovered that this family had applied to immigrate to Canada. So they were told that this would not happen unless they cooperated, and told them the truth about where my children were. This family very quickly disclosed everything they knew, and a confirmed location was given in Saudi at the sister's residence. They said that the sister had come to Kenya, and they all went to Saudi together. The search centre and embassy in Kenya were told the Canadian government were going to take over the investigation and get the children out. One was told to fly to Frankfurt and wait the children. But instead, a call by the Saudi embassy was made to the sister's home, which alerted my ex, and just like that, there was no longer a confirmed location. All was lost. This was very careless and unbelievable. I would have thought that investigation into what went terribly wrong would have happened, so it could not be repeated. Why was there no official report submitted from the embassy It's beyond my understanding. There was zero accountability. I felt the embassy owed a responsibility to us, but I never got any response to my queries. I just got the runaround. The embassy in Saudi told me that they would not talk with me anymore. A complete report and accountability should have been submitted, and instead, I was simply dismissed. As soon as a kidnapping case lands on your desk, the reporting needs to start. Time is of the essence. I've kept all the newspaper articles, TV news videos, etc., hoping my kids would see all I did to find them and bring them back, so they knew how much I loved them. That was especially important to me, that they know the truth. I recorded a video message for Aziza and Karim in case something finally happened to me before being able to reunite with them. I did not want to leave any stone unturned. Finally, in the end, after 7 years, the kidnapper used Aziza and Karim as a terrorist would to get what he wanted, back into Canada, without going to jail, as well as several other demands, such as the children live with him. This horrific criminal act caused permanent damage to me and my children. Post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, just to name a few symptoms. My government simply told me their hands were tied because some countries were not signatories to the Hague Convention. They did not want an international scandal and even tipped my ex-husband off by placing a call to his sister's residence. The Canadian embassy just wanted the problem to go away. I'm begging our government to make changes to our laws in order to help bring our Canadian children home. Even after 3 decades, I'm still brought to tears every time I think of my children without their loving mother for those lost impressionable years. When I see other parents and children presently going through this exact situation and not receiving support from Canada, I'm traumatized all over again. These Canadian children are suffering, and who's going to help them? Step up, Canada. Think of them as your children. They're innocent and being used by an abusive criminal parent. They need our help. We must do all we can to help save their childhood as well as their lives. Signed, Jamie Phillips.
This is another statement from a parent who couldn't be here today. It's from Shelly Bayak, who could not attend the meeting. These are her words. My 2 children, Mia and Adeliam Tarabishi, were abducted from Abbotsford, British Columbia to Lebanon in March 2018 by their other parent, Wissam Tabarishi. They were ages 7 and 9 at the time. In Abbotsford, when Mia and Liam weren't attending community activities and spending time with friends, which in general is a typical experience of any other child growing up in the suburban Canada, they shared their time equally with both parents at respective homes. Then, the abduction took place. Shared custody is common in divorced families, but what was uncommon was that Wissam was preparing to kidnap the children to his native homeland of Lebanon. So during spring break of 2018, Wissam told me he was taking the children to Washington State for the holidays, but instead boarded a plane in Seattle and promptly flew with the children to Beirut, Lebanon. Mia and Liam remain in Lebanon to this day, over 4 years later. There were some quick actions that took place immediately after the crime occurred, yet despite the quick actions of the Abbotsford Police Department to locate and attempt to speak with Wissam immediately following the abduction, despite a national warrant for arrest on Wissam, despite Interpol red and yellow notices in place for Wissam and the children, despite the involvement of Global Affairs Canada here in Canada and the Canadian Embassy in Beirut almost from day one following the abduction, despite me, their mother, hiring lawyers and spending months in Lebanon attempting to resolve this crisis. Amidst a whole list of other remedies attempted, the children remain in Lebanon and I have zero contact with them. The last time I heard the voices of Mia and Liam was in early 2021. It was a Skype call, but they were not allowed to turn the video feature. The children were strained and under obvious stress and duress when they spoke with me. They no longer call me mom, but rather Shelly, and avoiding saying I love you back, for that they missed anything at all about the people and community that they had lived in for the first impressionable years of their lives. Me and Liam could be returned home to Canada, but I cannot do it alone, and I need the Canadian government to negotiate their return. Political will and likely financial support or sanctions are what drives decision-making in the arenas of international kidnappings. I have tried every remedy I can think of to protect me and Liam and to bring justice to them. I need Justin Trudeau to step up as voted and representative of our nation and defender of the rights of all Canadian children, and to demand justice for my children. He must negotiate an agreement with Lebanon to have the children returned to Canada.
This statement is from another one of our members, Elena. My two daughters, Rita and Maria, were abducted by their father from Canada to the UAE in 2018. I last saw my daughters in August 2019. The pain of losing my abducted children cannot be described in words. It's a tremendous grief that I feel every day. My daughters were everything to me. I'm still fighting for their return to their home in Canada. Rita and Maria, I love you and miss you more than anything and anyone in the world. Not a moment goes by when I don't think about you, about the young women you've become. I'm very proud of you. I know that one day we will reunite. I live for that moment. I will never lose my hope. Lots of hugs and kisses from Mama.
Another one. To my beloved fellow parents of children who have been abducted. All of us can attest to the fact that there is no pain and no loss like that of having a child parentally abducted. Nothing compares to being stripped of your sources of happiness and stripped of your life source. You go to sleep each night wishing that you will open your eyes. You go to sleep each night wishing that you will open your eyes next morning to find your children in their beds. However, the reality is, the odds of that happening has never been lower. We all know too well the difficulty of the battle we fight to have our children returned. This is our opportunity to join together in an effort to break the silence, to have our calls for help heard, and to bring our children home. When we work together, everything is possible. And while the advice I have may seem bleak and even insensitive at this moment in time, my advice comes from someone who was in your shoes and cried your tears in despair and agony. As hard as it may be, never lose hope. Whatever the odds be, never give up. Khawla Khalifa.
This is a statement from not a parent who's suffered this loss, but actually a woman who's worked in this field for decades before retiring some time ago. And after the FAIT report recommended some changes and improvements, legislation, reporting, she was one of the few who took up that cause, and as part of the RCMP published a series of reports on parental abductions from Canada over a series of years. Then she retired and no one took over that work from her. Dear friends of Return Our Children Home Canada, thank you for contacting me in support of the development of a set of calls to action. The protection and rights of parentally abducted children and the left behind parent are vitally important, especially when a child is abducted from Canada to another country. I'm pleased to share my experiences, program development skills, having completed research publications with Return Our Children Home Canada. The reunification of an abducted child with a left-behind parent is a complex undertaking and may involve many levels of service. Under the government's Brighter Future program, launched around 1988, great strides were made for many decades to address missing children's issues, and among them parental abduction. Additionally, several government agencies collaborated and earmarked resources to address the issue and implement change. The collaborating agencies are listed as follows: Border Services Agency, Department of Foreign Services, currently Global Affairs, Department of Justice, and the RCMP National Missing Services. Within these government services, there were many services connected to the government agencies that were also involved in the search, recovery, and reunification process. Furthermore, several non-government agencies like International Social Services Canada, whose mandate targeted international child protection services, were involved. I'm pleased to share my thoughts with you as this group navigates the system in 2022. As with any issue, new problems surface over time as programs and services are tested. As a group, you share a common bond. Therefore, it may be helpful to conduct a case study to determine the nature and scope of the current problem. I wish you success in this undertaking. Sincerely, Dr. Marlene Daly, PhD, RCMP National Missing Children Services, retired.
Okay, I know it's so cold and it's getting colder by the minute. I wrote a poem. I'm gonna read it, and then we're gonna have a moment of silence for our children, and we're gonna open the mic for anyone who wants to speak, and then we'll call it a night. We'll give you a few thank you.
Or continue somewhere warm.
Or continue somewhere warm.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So, this is a poem I wrote soon after my children were abducted. I believe it was in 2016. It's called Our Pain is Real. Have you no empathy, you politicians, lawmakers, game changers? You have parents, you are parents. What if this happened to you? What if your once life partner stole away your kids? What gives these people the right to manipulate and control? You, the politicians, the lawmakers, the game changers, who are you? The careless, ignoring these children, robbed of a loving and caring parent, desperately seeking reunification. You have the power to make things right, to bring justice. Yet you ignore their silent cries. While you sleep, we stay awake in despair, thinking, hoping, planning. The moment we will see our children again, if we will, what do you care? You don't. You, politicians, lawmakers, game changers. When we ask you, you say you're doing what you can. You're not. You don't fucking care. And when you talk about your children's rights, you completely push this issue to the side. Like we don't exist, like our plight is not important. But our children, our struggle is real and true. As you read this, you politicians, lawmakers, and game changers, some other child is being abducted. We will fight as we have been. Left behind parents are some of the strongest people because we have survived the worst. We continue to live while grieving for someone who is still alive. Maintain some kind of normalcy during our personal crisis. This is an appeal to you, the politician, lawmaker, and game changer. Do something. The time is now to fight. Stand with us. I stand, we stand.
Yeah.
So we'll take 1 minute of silence in honoring our children's memories, and we'll start right now. Thank you, everybody.
Let's take a minute. If anybody would like to take the microphone for a minute, you're welcome to. And then I just have a few closing moments to mention. That's the sound of some very cold people. All right, it's just about 15 pages, no longer, I promise. Oh, you laugh.
I will tackle you.
We'd like to thank the many, many people who have contributed to us being here. The friends and family who helped to offset our travel costs. It's expensive to travel within Canada, and every dollar we've spent here is $1 less we're able to spend in pursuit of contact with our children. On the ground here in Ottawa, we'd like to thank the Jack Purcell Community Centre for hosting our meetings, the Business Inn and Suites for hosting our attendees from far away, Bocado Crepe and Gelato, that's Marwan, Sureprint, Grounded Kitchen, Coffee and Bar, that's Amir, who you've just been to see, H&N Unique Creations for the surprise mugs that some of us have received. We'd like to thank the sister organizations who supported us. Shine the Light for abducted children, Bring Abducted Children Home or Back Home, I Stand Parent Network, Find My Parent, I Hope in Lebanon, and I'm sure many more that I'm forgetting to mention. We'd like to thank the Iraqi, Paraguayan, and Lebanese and Japanese embassies here in Ottawa for receiving us in the last few days. Tomorrow, we'll visit the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates and hope to be received there just as generously. Our reception here in Ottawa has been so wonderful. Many of you joined us to help make these beautiful candles and signs. Some of you have traveled across the country to be here, Zainab. Some of you drove from the United States to be here in support, Randy. And all of you have come here to support us on a day that began with snow and ended with, and then I left it blank because I knew something was going to happen with the weather. Your open-hearted reception of each of us has really given us strength. Tomorrow we'll meet with Global Affairs Canada, which is probably the single most important legislative part of this adventure. What we want to convey to them is that we're here, we're organizing, and we'll be back as many times as it takes to really change the story of what happens when a child's abducted across an international border. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know it's probably too cold to clap, but like stomp your feet or something. You guys deserve like so much appreciation. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support. Go Ottawa.